we've just announced in partnership with Warner Brothers and HBO and Daz, we've announced a new program around Game of Thrones, which is obviously one of the most exciting IPs and immersive worlds out there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben, and as usual, I'm the host for today's podcast. Today, our special guest is Jeff Marsilio, the co-founder of Nifty's. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so before we get into what Nifty's is all about, tell us more about yourself and how you got started in crypto.
Well, before I partnered with my co-founders to found Nifty's, I was senior vice president of new media at the NBA, and I was in that role for almost 8 years. And that role covered things like social media partnerships, app distribution, digital content strategy, and a lot of emerging technology work. My group was responsible for a lot of the VR and the AR. We did the first ever live broadcast of a sports game in virtual reality, for example. And then in 2018, we formed a cross-functional working group focused on how blockchain might impact the NBA business. And I led that group. And we ultimately partnered with Dapper Labs to create NBA Top Shot. So that was my first professional exposure to NFTs. I was invested in it a little bit longer than that personally, but was able to take my personal passion into my professional life, and was really, frankly, surprised when NBA Top Shot took off like a rocket. But while that was really, really booming, I met my co-founders and we started Nifty's.
Yeah, so tell us more about what Nifty's is.
Nifty's is a platform for brands and creators to launch and manage NFT programs. And we partnered with some of the biggest entertainment properties in the world. We're partnered with Warner Brothers, and we've done the largest scale ever avatar program with The Matrix. We sold 100,000 PFPs, and about a month later, asked everybody to come back, take the red pill or blue pill. And about 42,000 of those NFTs were red pilled or blue pilled in 48 hours. And we just keep, innovating and trying to bring NFTs to mainstream audiences. Since then, we did a Looney Tunes program. We did something with Shark Week. We did something with Sony Pictures around Bullet Train. And we just announced something else really big today. I know we're going to talk about that.
Yeah,
but think about it as not so much a marketplace. Marketplace is very transactional. You can buy and sell NFTs, not only on primary sales, but you can, in a marketplace, you can buy and sell them with other users. For us, those are features, but it's not the main event. The main event for us is when NFTs can be used, when they can create community, when they can unlock experiences, when they can be interactive. And we've been building a platform for ourselves and our partners to create NFT programs that, once they're in the hands of collectors, can stay really engaging and stay really fun.
So it seems to me like, I myself am in the habit of using NFT marketplace, right? The term, but like you said, it's just one feature. But from what I gather, Nifty's is more than just that. It's talking about a whole social experience, and kind of you guys are like providing a platform to manage the entire collection from day one to the end.
That's right. That's well said. And one of the core features, actually, we've been working on and launched internally. It's sort of an internal feature, but it's really powerful for us. We call it our application engine. And it allows us to create different ways to interact with NFTs or use NFTs to create interactions on a much more rapid basis. Basically, when we launched The Matrix, we had really big ambitions and plans. And we were off, I think, to a really strong start with that red pill, blue pill challenge that I described, right? It was this really cool, it almost felt like a video game, but it was on chain. You took a red or blue pill, which was an on-chain transaction that burned your original avatar. And if you picked the red pill, It turned you into a badass resistance fighter. But what we learned from that experience is it's hard to build those kinds of on-chain applications for NFTs. There aren't really tools out there for doing that. And the next time we wanted to create an application like that, it was going to take us months again. And so the roadmap started to stretch out. And it's like, oh man, how are we going to keep this community, this huge community that we just created, engaged on a regular basis? And we looked around for tools. And to be honest with you, the tools just aren't out there. So I think, frankly, that's the same problem that I've seen a lot of projects have in the NFT space. They've got big ambitions and really, really good intentions to deliver on a regular basis for their NFT projects. But once they get it out there and they're really excited and they got the community, they have a hard time keeping up delivering engagement on a regular basis. So what we chose to do, and this is back in, the Red Pill, Blue Pill Challenge was in January of 2021. So it was a while ago. But what we chose to do was really go heads down, build out the infrastructure of Nifty's, and build this application engine that now allows us to create activities for NFTs on a much more regular basis. The first of these activities will come for the Matrix in a couple of weeks. I think I'm not allowed to say too much about it because it's a sort of a surprise. But basically, we're re-engaging that Matrix community with a new activity, and we'll be able to do that on a more regular basis going forward, which we think is really, really exciting. And then we're going to take that and we're going to make that ability available to all of our programs on our platform, whether we're running them or whether some of our new partners who are running their own programs are running them. So it's something that really the whole space can ultimately benefit from.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think one of the biggest problems in this space, which is kind of what you're alluding to, is the lack of competent developers. So, I mean, even if you have, right, the point is, even though if there are developers in the space, most of them are already taken up, and usually NFT communities, NFT projects are not the ones that will have this kind of developer talent, and it's hard to find them in the first place. So building a platform or template engine, right, that allows different communities to just cut and paste different mechanisms and functions is really useful.
That's right. And you said it better than I said it, I think. So you understood it quickly. Thank you. The other thing that Nifty's does that's interesting, that I think you'll find interesting, is for a long time, we were minting NFTs only on Palm, which is that side chain to Ethereum. Consensus is behind it. It's really terrific. But a lot of projects choose to launch on Ethereum because that's where a lot of liquidity and interoperability and security is. And frankly, the value of NFTs on Ethereum is really higher than it is anywhere else. The problem on Ethereum, as you know, is transactions can be expensive. And even today, where gas fees are relatively low, those are pretty high for certain kinds of transactions. If you want to gamify an experience, or you want to create loyalty points or something like that around an experience that you built on Ethereum, and you do it on Ethereum, then you're really hamstrung by the gas fees. So then what projects do is they say, you know what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to build on something like Polygon or Palm, which is what we did. What Nifty has now built is a multi-chain approach that allows for our programs or our partners' programs to have their primary assets on Ethereum, but then have all the gamification assets on Palm or another side chain. So you can kind of have, we say in America, you can have your cake and eat it too, right? You can have both benefits. That's, that I think is going to be really powerful for the space too. You can imagine a project that wanted to deliver exciting engagement, but discovered to your point before, developing those engagements on a bespoke basis was going to be really hard and resource intensive, and the resources were not there. And two, doing it on Ethereum, where their primary asset wasn't really an option, because you can't charge people for every single thing that they do in your program. So we've created a solution for that as well.
That is pretty thinking far ahead, because I think there are only a couple of projects that have done that. From what I can tell,
yes,
there's some degen on-chain ETH games that have done it as well, and I think that it's the right approach, right? And one of the
there are
biggest
a couple
reasons,
individual projects have done it.
Yeah.
A couple individual projects have done it. It's a great success in my opinion. But I've never seen, and maybe you can correct me, but I don't think any platform has offered that to any program to do, right? You can mint, but to create engagement that is interoperable across chains is, I think, unique.
Yeah, for sure. As I was saying, individual projects, not platforms. I have not seen the platform.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
This brings down to actually one of the questions I was going to ask, but you kind of answered it. And you know how NFTs have different value across different chains. And obviously ETH was one of the first. Well, Bitcoin technically is the first, but ETH was around. You know, it has this cultural moat of influencers and liquidity and everything. And it's like a Veblen good, right? Even if it's priced higher, people still want to be on ETH.
I think maybe it's a bit of a Veblen good, but I think it's maybe more just network effects. Not just liquidity, but interoperability. I can confidently know, and I think, frankly, even beyond the network effects, there is this Lindy effect or something like that, where you can be confident that your NFT is still going to be around for a long, long time because it's on Ethereum, and so you're willing to pay more. So there's a combination of that, the Veblen goods, the network effects, the Lindy effect. There's just a lot of reasons to want to have your NFT on Ethereum. I know that's how I feel a lot of the time. And I think a lot of other chains are making great progress here. And ultimately, what Nifty's wants to be is somewhat agnostic when it comes to this. We're not going to tell you, you have to put your premium assets on Ethereum and you have to put your gamification assets on Palm. Well, we want to give you, as someone who leads a program, options, and then you'll choose. And, you know, frankly, if you believe in a multi-chain future, you believe that there will be some specialization among them. And I do. I happen to believe in a multi-chain future. I think there will be some specialization. There'll be some good reasons why you might want one NFT over here and another NFT over there. What's important, I think, is twofold. One, that they interoperate with each other and create a great experience. And two, that all that complexity is invisible to the user. It just shouldn't be hard for the user to take advantage of those diverse benefits.
Yeah, I completely agree with multi-chain future. I think we had a couple of speakers on the show as well that talked about, you know, different multi-chain bridging, multi-chain trading, all sort of things. And it's definitely, I mean, it's not really the future, it's already kind of here. If you're not having a multi-chain strategy, you kind of screwed.
Yeah, it's here, but it's fragmented. And so what we're trying to kind of bridge those gaps without literally bridging the NFTs, because actually bridging an NFT can be expensive, it could be complicated, and I think, frankly, it's often unnecessary. You can get the benefits for some of these things that I'm describing, like gamification, without actually literally bridging.
Okay, so here is a segue question, because we've been talking about, you know, how NFTs are priced across different chains differently. And, you know, one of the biggest questions that I'm pretty sure anyone will ask or have in their mind is, hey, you know, we're in a bear market right now, along with every other asset class. What is going on? Do you think there's a difference in value flow? For NFTs, you know, are they different from other asset classes, or do they just follow the macro events? Are they highly correlated? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly highly correlated. I think it's a lot like crypto more broadly. I think we are in a long, steep, but wavy adoption curve. I think, like, we're watching new technology, a new internet essentially be adopted. And so if you were to wipe away the froth of speculation, there is a wavy line going up in terms of the adoption of this technology. And so, you know, how big it's going to get, nobody can say for sure. There are people who doubt it, and there are people who are incredibly bullish. And so that creates speculation about its ultimate value. And speculation is what causes those waves, right? So, you know, the adoption is, I guess, the straight line, but then the waviness comes from the speculation. When people have greater confidence, or maybe greater liquidity or access to funds, or more risk on, because it's a more risk on environment, then those kinds of assets, they, in fact, they amplify some of those macro trends. So yes, I think absolutely, crypto, blockchain, NFTs, they're speculative because we're all speculating that that adoption curve is going to go over here, or it's going to go over here, or it's going to go up here to the moon. Now, Nifty doesn't get caught up in that. I don't personally get caught up in that too much. We're really focused on the straight line, not the wavy line. We're focused on bringing more people into Web3 and giving more kinds of people more reasons to be excited about this technology. And I think that's just really good for the Web3 space. I think if we can make this really accessible, it'll be a lot more interesting to people. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of mainstream people are really skeptical of NFT technology.
Yeah, for sure.
And honestly, it can get emotional and it can even be passionate. It's, there are people who are really just don't like NFTs, man. They think it's really, really uncool. And I think the reason is frankly because it was adopted so quickly in the beginning, and there were a lot of people who were mostly focused on the speculative element of it, and a lot of projects that were focused on the speculative element of it. And that's kind of a turnoff to a regular person. It's a little bit like if you showed up at a party and you just started talking about all the money that you have. Nobody wants to have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
They might want to hear what you do for a living, but they don't want to hear about your salary. And if you went on Twitter in 2021 to learn about NFTs, you were hearing a lot of talk about money and not enough conversation about reasons that you as a mainstream user might be interested in this technology. And it turned a lot of people off. I actually think that this bear market that we're now in is good for mainstream adoption, because less of the conversation is about that speculation and more of it is about the cool stuff that this technology can do, the reasons why you should care. Nifty's does a few things to make mainstream audiences care. One, we try to partner with the biggest IP in the world. And I think, I keep teasing it, but you and I are going to get to one of the big ones we announced just today. But we partner with things like The Matrix, with Looney Tunes, with Bullet Train, and so forth. And we give people a reason to care who don't already have a reason to care. That's inviting them into the space, number one. Number two, we try to make it easy for them, right? We try to make it really easy. Like, just because this is powerful doesn't mean it has to be really hard. Now, I always say there are two ways to make things easy: the easy way and the right way. And the easy way is to do it totally centralized, to just custody all the NFTs. Maybe don't even let people transfer them off of your platform, and just really restrict and actually limit the benefits of Web3 through centralization. Nifty's makes it easy the hard way. We introduced a non-custodial wallet through our partner with Magic Link. But we also allow you, and that, you can just sign up with your email address. You don't have to manage your private keys, but you can export them. We also allow you to attach your MetaMask to Nifty's. We let you pay with credit card. We also allow you to pay with cryptocurrency. You can move your NFTs off of Nifty's and trade them on OpenSea, or you can trade them directly on Nifty's. So we give you a lot of optionality as a mainstream user and also as a power user. We make things easy the hard way, but the right way. And then finally, as I said at the beginning, we're really just focused on what can NFTs do for you. I'm a collector of basketball cards. I've got them in a shoebox in my closet. Basketball cards can't do anything. That technology, square cardboards, it can't do anything. NFTs are not like that if we do them the right way. So we try to make them interactive and dynamic and fun. And that's what the application engine that we just created is all about. And our first activity with The Matrix comes out in a couple of weeks.
I think one of the greatest examples of that kind of highlighted what you've just mentioned is the Reddit NFTs. Like recently, there were a lot of people talking about,
hell yeah,
right? There were a lot of NFT haters on Reddit, and then once they realized, hey, there are virtual avatars, and when Reddit marketed the NFTs, they did not mention NFTs at all. They just marketed them as virtual avatars, and everyone's like hooked. oh wow, yeah, I love this, it's so cool. It's what we've been telling you all along,
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly, exactly. And the term NFT, it got a little bit of a connotation attached to it.
mhm,
I'm personally of the opinion that we're going to keep using the word NFT, the acronym NFT. I think we're going to keep
yeah,
using it. I think that it's helpful to remind non-NFT collectors, mainstream people, that they're really, at the end of the day, they're just digital collectibles, or they're just digital ownership that represents different kinds of assets on the internet. But I think Reddit did a brilliant job
mhm,
getting, basically creating a kind of Trojan horse for NFTs to move into their mainstream community and hook hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
yeah. I mean, they have 400 million users, so it's a big win.
Big win for the space. Big win for
Yeah.
the Web3 space.
You mentioned earlier about Web3 and how you get Nifty's had to play the right but hard way, right? Which is kind of
Yeah.
enabling both power users and more normie or retail users. And one of the big questions about the space is, like you mentioned, is centralized versus decentralized. And obviously
Yeah.
Nifty's is kind of in the middle. There's
Yeah.
no token, so it's more centralized, but obviously you're trying to bring in decentralized crowd, allowing people to bring assets on off the platform.
Yeah.
And
I think that's fair.
over
I think that's fair.
yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and over the last 2 years, there's kind of this surge of decentralized NFT marketplace. I say decentralized with uh, merely because they have a token. Platforms like LooksRare and X2Y2, and they've been always complaining about, oh, OpenSea is too big of a monopoly. We can't let them get away with this. We need to give their hands and power back to the community. And yeah, Nifty's obviously is following more of the OpenSea model. So what are your thoughts on this?
Oh man, it's a big question.
Yeah.
And actually, what I was starting to interrupt you to say is that having a token doesn't make you decentralized. And actually, a
Exactly.
lot of
I
times,
agree.
and you said it, and you said it, but a lot of times the token distribution is pretty centralized, and a lot of times the governance afforded by the token is fairly restricted. So I don't think token means decentralization. It means the potential for greater decentralization potentially. Um, in my opinion, to build a company, to build a great service, it often helps to have a company of people who are focused on it with resources and ownership of those resources in the more traditional way. I'm extremely bullish on the future of DAOs, but I don't think we're there today in most use cases to say, oh, you know what, you could just replace Nifty's with a DAO and manage it, in a kind of democratic fashion. I think that you would find that innovation was a lot slower that way. That's my opinion. But I think DAO tooling and DAO culture will advance, and I'm very, very bullish about where that goes. In terms of, but there's lots of meanings for centralization and decentralization, and it's true we're not as decentralized as even as something as OpenSea, for example, but our transactions happen on chain. Our NFTs are held in non-custodial wallets, and you really own them. You can really use them. You can really move them. They can really interoperate with other experiences. And there are, I think, examples of NFT platforms out there where that's not true, where it's really truly centralized. And to me, that actually sacrifices most of the real value proposition of Web3. If I can't own my NFT, if I can't trade it on OpenSea, if I can't send it to a friend, if I can't, leave it in my will, then do I really own it? Is it really an NFT at all? So we take more of a balanced customer experience
Mhm.
first approach, where we just say, all right, well, what's going to be the best customer experience, recognizing that part of that customer experience is the real ownership and interoperability of their NFTs. And then we make choices about whether something is going to be more centralized or less centralized through Nifty's. Over time, I think Nifty's will become more decentralized. I think our media, for example, which is currently held in the cloud, could be held in a decentralized cloud. And I think there will be other ways that we can become more decentralized over time. But I think jumping all the way to complete decentralization, which frankly nobody has really done in the NFT space, would be a mistake because you'd sacrifice too much of the consumer experience, and most of the mainstream would be just left outside of the potential.
I completely agree with this. So I think in my last session as well, we were talking about, you know, the effectiveness of DAOs, and like you rightfully said, there's a limit. I think the space is full of well, not full of, but maybe they're quite loud. There are a lot of angst, and there are a lot of those you know, we want true freedom. We want to break away from the system, but there is merit
I think
to be.
I think those people are just idealistic, and we need
Yeah.
them because they help us keep track of the North Star, right? Like
Yes.
they're the ones when the clouds of commercialism or consumerism kind of cover the sky. They help us find the North Star. That's the direction we all need to point, but we can't go all the way there in one fell swoop, as we'll just leave everything behind, especially the customer experience.
Agree completely, especially when you're doing a business, right? No matter how decentralized you get, a business needs leaders, it needs a proper management team, you know, which are all elements of centralization. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get too philosophical because I did read some scientific papers on this where they were talking about you know, how we evolve. We grew up with social coordination. We grew up with having leaders in place. Having
Yeah.
a system where there are no actual leaders is almost impossible to survive. So there will always be elements of centralization. That's just my opinion in whatever business model
Well,
management
it's,
model.
I mean, now we're really getting philosophical, but I don't know if necessarily decentralization and leadership are at odds. You know, as long as the leader is chosen and empowered by the people that they lead, then you know, it's a kind of decentralization in a sense, and maybe maybe certain responsibilities, or maybe certain privileges are decentralized, but you can still choose people to lead you. But I just don't think DAOs right now for my business. I mean, I won't speak to other areas that I don't know, but for our business, for the NFT platform business, where we're creating a customer experience, I don't think DAOs are the answer. I'll give you another example. You need somebody, you need a company to be held accountable if you're going to be partnering with companies like Warner Brothers. They aren't going to partner with a cloud of people, right? Of anonymous people. They need doxed founders. They need people who concern themselves with compliance, people who they can sign a contract with and be held accountable. And I'm not saying that none of those things are true for DAOs, but it's a lot harder for someone like Warner Brothers to partner with that kind of organization versus a more traditional organization. And we just think it's so important at Nifty. We think it's so important to give an on-ramp, not just to the mainstream user, but to the mainstream creator and the mainstream IP.
One last difficult question, which is on the debate of royalties. There's this been huge thing about royalties, and I think the biggest propagation of that was SudoSwap when they announced their NFT AMM model, which basically allows traders to bypass royalties on NFT platforms, right? And it has kind of created this whole debacle about, oh, you know, should creators be paid royalties? Do they even deserve it in the first place? Is the business model even good if they have to only rely on royalties, right? And it's kind of funny because that was the first value proposition that the NFT space was championing for at the start. They was like, oh, you know, royalties can break away, will allow NFTs will allow creators to break away from big third parties that control all their money. Now you have royalties, but now this is a question, right? So what do you think?
Well, I think that we should honor the intent of creators. That to me is so simple and obvious. If the intent of a creator is that they created something with a royalty, then we should honor it. At the same time, realistically, we can expect people to avoid paying things when they can. So I think we need better solutions to protect the intent of creators. And it's not surprising to me that we see a bit of a race to the bottom among exchanges who are just competing for liquidity at the end of the day. And yeah, they have different features, and some of them I think have terrific features. I saw OpenSea today announced features that protect people against theft, and I think that's fantastic. But the most valuable thing that a marketplace has to offer is its liquidity, and competing for that means reduction of fees, just the temptation not to pay royalties and things of that nature. And that's just human nature, and that's just business, and we can expect it. So we really need to put our heads together and come up with means to protect the intent of the creator, and really protect, in some ways, protect the marketplaces from themselves and their own prisoner's dilemma, right? Because that's where they are. I mean, they're basically, they feel like, oh shoot, if I don't do this, the next guy does it, and that you end up in that kind of race to the bottom.
Mhm.
So uh, I think that marketplaces should join together and choose their best interests, which is ultimately to empower and reward creators and protect the intent of creators. And I hope that we see that. I don't think, as far as Nifty's is concerned, we're gonna continue to pay royalties. I don't. We're a drop in the bucket in terms of the liquidity, so I don't know if that's gonna really, blow anybody's minds. But we're gonna keep paying creators royalties, and I can't even imagine a world where that changes for at least for our company.
Now we get to the big news. We kind of been alluding
Oh,
to it in the past
yeah,
few questions.
yeah,
Kind of shared. So yeah, what is the big news? Can you just tell us?
yeah, man. Well, today, that when we're recording this, is November 2nd. So we've just announced,
Mhm.
and I don't know how quickly you're going to release this, but we've just announced in partnership with Warner Brothers and HBO and Daz, we've announced a new program around Game of Thrones, which is obviously one of the most exciting IPs and immersive worlds out there.
Yeah, so that's amazing. Obviously, before the session, I was talking about how I was a huge Game of Thrones fan as well.
Right.
Could you just share some insights? How does a partnership like this materialize? Does Nifty's approach them? Do they approach you? How does that work? Try and get some, insider
Yeah.
inner workings.
Well, we've been like insanely lucky at Nifty's to be partnered with one of the biggest and best entertainment companies in the world, essentially from our inception. On the
Mhm.
day that Nifty's launched, which was, I believe, July 12th of 2021, we launched the platform with basically a free giveaway of Space Jam NFTs. And Space Jam
Yep.
is part of the Looney Tunes universe that Warner
Yep.
Brothers owns and operates. And ever since, we've just been deepening and expanding our relationship with Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers has been deepening and expanding their commitment to the Web3 space. And I really don't think they get enough credit for this extent of the commitment that they are making to Web3, because they are a huge entertainment company. They don't have to do this. This is
Mhm.
not about bottom line for them, right? This is about embracing the future. And they're embracing it in a bigger way than I think pretty much any other media company, or maybe even mainstream brand, with maybe the exception of the NBA itself, uh, in the world. So I just think it's incredible, and we're really, really fortunate to just be in the shotgun seat with them on their journey into Web3. And so, look, to answer your question, normally, you are, as a small company like ours, you're going out and you're trying to find somebody who wants to do an NFT project, and you're trying to convince them you're the right ones to do it. But in this case, we've been partnered with Warner Brothers for a year and a half, and we've been deepening that partnership, and we've been talking about all the opportunities that are before us together. And we just collectively saw Game of Thrones as maybe the most exciting
Mhm.
IP in the world right now, the most relevant, the most exciting, the one that's most loved, the one that has the most passionate fan base. And we just wanted to make something incredible together. So that's how it came together. We just, I don't remember who called who first, but we all were just like, we got to do something with Game of Thrones.
Do you have any idea about what the plans are for the program, or is that
I know,
supposed to be
I know all
secret?
the plans, man. I wrote the plans. I know all the plans. I can't tell you all the details today,
Mhm.
but I can tell you a few really cool things. first of all, I think this is going to be a first of its kind program, in that it's you're familiar with the company Daz, right? And their work, they created CloneX, those amazing 3D avatars. They're creating these Game of Thrones avatars, and in this case, they'll be totally upgradable. So you'll be able to upgrade these avatars through different missions and collecting and acquiring items and weapons and companions and so forth to upgrade and equip and unequip and change and customize your own Game of Thrones character. So it's a first of its kind. You'll also have an opportunity to collect essentially what amount to trading cards from the show. And so you'll be able to collect from the show itself, and collecting from the show will give you different advantages in this program. So think about this as like the ultimate digital collectible, the ultimate avatar, the ultimate in gamified collectible experiences.
All right. And that's a lot of hints. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. I wish I could say more, man, but I think we're going to reveal more over the course of the next several weeks. This will be released in 2022, so it's coming fast.
Okay,
and
cool.
I can't give you the date yet because I don't think we've announced the date, but I will tell you that if you follow this program on Twitter, it's called Build Your Realm. So at Build Your Realm. And this is the Game of Thrones official NFT program. And if you follow that, you're going to find just a slow but really enticing trickle of information about this program in the lead up to the initial sale.
All right. Very amazing news. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think just to round off the session, obviously, partnering with big IP brands like Warner Brothers will always be your mainstay, main goal. But what are Nifty's plans for, other than that, for the short term and long term?
Yeah. Well, the reason that we partner with some of the biggest entertainment companies in the world is because we can. If you were to sit down, Ben, if you were starting a company like Nifty's today, and I said, make your target list, what do you want to do, right? Game of Thrones might be right at the very top of your list. You're a huge fan, and you know that it's a huge, passionate community. So if you can do Game of Thrones, then you do Game of Thrones. But Nifty's, we don't think of ourselves as just a platform for big brands. We think of ourselves as a platform for passionate communities. And those include more traditional brands, maybe Web 2 influencers and Web 2 creators, but there's no reason that it wouldn't also include Web 3 creators, some of these awesome grassroots brands that have sprung up and engendered massive followings. We are a platform not for brands, but for NFT programs and communities with the purpose of engaging passionate fans, and those fans can come from every corner. So when it comes to our plans, over time, we want to attract more partners to lead more programs on Nifty's, and sometimes Nifty's will take the lead in really publishing and running a program. But then there will be times when a partner will leverage the Nifty's platform and run the program more directly themselves. And I'll give you a good example of this. We recently, last week, we announced another partnership with an incredible studio called Polyform and the George Romero estate. Now, you probably know him. He's the godfather of horror. He created Night of the Living Dead. He created that whole, basically the zombie phenomenon. And Polyform and the George Romero estate are creating this incredibly innovative Zombie Nation project. They're leveraging the Nifty's platform. And it's a little bit more of a grassroots feel. In this case, the end user owns the IP in the zombie that they collect, which I don't think a brand has ever done before. Grassroots brands have, but never more traditional brand. So you can see how Nifty's can become a platform for more kinds of programs, but not necessarily Nifty's is not necessarily kind of running them directly. And I think that's the plan, right? As you look out ahead for Nifty's, it becomes more and more of a platform for more and more of a diversity of NFT programs.
All right. I think with that, We've covered quite a bit. Thank you so much for your time, Jeff.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it, Ben. Really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for the tough questions and the thoughtful dialogue. This has been awesome.